pun the TCA cycle. Alright, so I hope my explanation and the slide helps you to understand more lah. Okay, the logic behind, or the theory, or what is important behind the Krebs cycle. Okay, what happens, why is it happen? Okay, what is the another variation of it? Okay, the glyoxylate cycle. Okay, jadi harap kamu boleh you can use it to your knowledge lah. Okay, so sebenarnya kalau kamu tahu tu banyak yang kamu boleh apply in your daily life. Right, so we covered the Krebs cycle. Okay, now another thing that we're going to cover today, okay, in lecture 4, okay, now we are going to look at some other pathway. Okay, so selain daripada glucose, okay, undergoing glycolysis to produce pyruvate, from pyruvate then it enters the CTS, the Krebs cycle, ataupun goes glyoxylate cycle. There actually many other pathway. Okay, if you still remember kita punya kelas yang last week kan, kalau kamu tengok all the charts in the all the biochemical that things that happen in your body, banyak sebenarnya beribu-ribu happening even now when you're sitting down. Okay, and there are a lot more pathway. Okay, especially when it comes to carbohydrate. Okay, jadi bukan saja in the production of ATP. Okay, glucose will also undergoes different pathway. Okay, sebab glucose juga diperlukan untuk menghasilkan glycogen. Okay, and glycogen is also catabolized, right? I did not can record. Sorry lah, saya tak ada record lah tadi. If I record now pun dah terlambat. Okay, I'll try lah record. Okay. Right, so I'm recording tapi only half of the class. Okay. Right, saya selalu lupa record. Suara pun tak sedap, muka pun tak handsome, buat apa nak record isi. Okay, right. So we're gonna go into some other pathway. Okay, so not only are you having glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, okay, but there are banyak lagi lah cycle. Okay, hari ni for this lecture we are going to go into 3 other cycle. Okay, there are 3 additional cycle that can happen, okay, in your body involving glucose. Right? Okay, jadi kita akan tengok itu . Right, so T4. Okay. So additional pathway in carbohydrate or in glucose metabolism. Okay, sebenarnya ada few more. Okay, actually the list is very long. Okay, but hari ini kita cukup lah bagi kamu 3 lah. I think 3 is also already killing you. I think by now your brain is already crying already. Okay. Right, so there are additional pathway in carbohydrate metabolism. Right, now in addition to glycolysis, okay, in addition to the TCA, Krebs cycle, in addition to the glyoxylate cycle, there are many more pathway, okay, that is happening in your body, okay, or in plant, okay, that involves carbohydrate. Okay, one of the most important one is the metabolism of tissue glycogen. Okay, so when you talk about metabolism of glycogen, you're either talking about the formation of glycogen from glucose or the breakdown of glycogen into glucose. Okay, maksudnya kamu membina glycogen ataupun kamu memusnahkan glycogen into glucose. Okay, so there is one example, or there is another pathway. Now another pathway is gluconeogenesis. Okay, what happen if you berpuasa? Okay, or what happen if you don't take starch? Okay, what happen if you're under starvation? Okay, do you still need energy? Of course. Okay, and in fact, you need to your brain, okay, your brain and your muscle actually use a lot of glucose. Okay, sebenarnya amount yang kamu makan, kecuali kalau kamu makan banyak sangat lah, actually the amount that an average person makan sebenarnya tak cukup. Okay, it's actually not enough from your diet. So but you still need a lot. Kalau tidak memang your brain will die, okay, you get pening kepala lah semua, banyak penyakit lah. So in the instances when you don't have enough glucose through diet, katakan kamu diet ke, kamu tak cukup makan ke, kamu puasa ke, ataupun tak cukup, ataupun kamu tak boleh makan glucose, okay, your body still can produce glucose. Okay, this process is called gluconeogenesis. Okay, producing its own glycogen using what? Okay, basically, as long as in your body you ada carbon, as long as your body ada hydrogen, as long as your body ada oxygen, this can be salvaged. Okay, so badan kita or your cell is actually macam kilang. Okay, so selagi ada as long as there is water in your body, as long as there is carbon dioxide, from the Krebs cycle tadi pun when you produce your these are salvageable to be used untuk menghasilkan glucose. Okay, because itulah it's like our body is like kilang. Okay, and then another one also important is the pentose phosphate pathway. Okay, now in our body what we normally makan adalah starch. Okay, and starch is a polymer of glucose. And glucose kalau dipotong-potong dia jadi glucose. And this is 6 carbon. Okay, but what you have to know is that your body not only dia memerlukan 6 carbon, okay, dalam bentuk starch, pyruvate, everything which is the production, but your body also need a lot of sugar dalam bentuk 5 carbon. Okay, because you have DNA. Okay, daripada mananya datang DNA kamu? Your RNA. Okay, in fact some protein also. Okay, yang penting ni lah DNA and RNA and some hormone. Okay, you will need 5 carbon sugar. So where do this come from? Okay, we don't take a lot of 5 carbon sugar. Okay, selalunya gula yang kita makan tu lah is a form of glucose, which is 6 carbon. So your body or our body needs to produce 5 carbon sugar because this will produce the ribose sugar for DNA and for DNA. Okay, for your cell, for your DNA, dan itulah. And okay, right? So where do they come from? Jadi ini juga yang akan kita cover sedikit lah. Okay, not so much. Okay. I think it's too much already. For this one, I think pentose phosphate is covered in other classes. I think ada, okay, in more detail. For our class tak sangat. Otherwise, it's too much. Saya mau ajarkan maupun saya pun it's too much for me to teach. Right? Okay, so we're going to look at 3 of these. Okay, in slightly more detail, but we're going to emphasize more on 1 and 2. Okay. So we're going to look at the metabolism of tissue glycogen. Okay, how your body produce glycogen from glucose and how your body break down glycogen to produce back glucose. Okay, right. So the metabolism of tissue glycogen. Okay, the first thing that we're going to look at now is the anabolism. Okay, macam mana badan kita menghasilkan glycogen. Okay, not so much lah. I think when we look at the cerebral, okay, we thought we're not going to cover so much lah. Okay, on this part of carbohydrate metabolism is just too much. Okay, untuk glycogen kita cukup dengan satu slide ini sajalah, right? Okay, so this is the pathway of glycogen production. Okay, so glycogen production. Okay, we know that glycogen is the storage for animal. Okay, kalau plant storage dalam bentuk starch. Okay, that's why you have kanji, tepung, semua daripada starch. Okay, but for human or for animal, our storage is dalam bentuk glycogen. Okay, so where does glycogen come from? Glycogen come from starch. Okay, right? Come from glucose that we eat from the starch lah. Right? So glycogen in specific, okay, glycogen comes from glucose 6-phosphate. Okay, now if you remember your glycolysis, okay, the first step of glycolysis is inilah. This is actually the first step of glycolysis, the production of glucose 6-phosphate. Okay, gula yang ada dalam darah kamu, the sugar that is in your blood, is absorbed into the cell. Okay, once it's absorbed into the cell, automatically what happens is that it will be phosphated. Okay, one phosphate from ATP will be put on the glucose. Why? So that the glucose cannot go out. Okay, because the glucose has to be maintained inside the cell. Kalau tidak ada keluar, you get kencing manis. Alright, so glucose that enters the cell is immediately phosphated. Okay, dia letak satu P. Okay, so that cannot go out lah. Okay, tak boleh keluar. So when a lot of glucose is phosphated, okay, number one, it can undergo glycolysis. Okay, so glucose 6-phosphate, fructose 6-phosphate, and blah blah blah, and get produced pyruvate. Okay, and also if glucose 6-phosphate is produced in a large number, okay, it can also be used as metabolite for other processes. In this case, untuk menghasilkan glycogen. Right? Okay, so itulah dia akan menghasilkan glycogen. So what happens is that the tissue glycogen is produced in the presence of an enzyme, okay, that is called glycogen synthase. Okay, jadi maksudnya glycogen is the product, synthase is the process. So the process of producing glycogen. So this is the name of the enzyme. Okay, right? So the glycogen synthase actually inilah from here. Okay, actually it's a 3-step process. Okay, so sebenarnya it's a long process. Okay, cuma we pendekkan jadi 3 step. Okay, but this is the final step to produce glycogen. Okay, using glycogen synthase. from glucose 6-phosphate, right? So what happens is that the glycogen synthase, okay, will form alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond in glycogen. Okay, this is the same bond when you produce starch. Okay, so glycogen apa tu glucose 1, glucose 2 dia akan bergabung. Dia gabung kat mana? Dia gabung dekat 1 carbon of the first one and then 4 carbon on the second one. Okay, so dia gabung. So 1 to 4, 1 to 4, 1 to 4. So dia jadi panjang. Right? So the glycogen synthase will form alpha 1 to 4 glycosidic bond in the glycogen. Okay, and the glycogen synthesis depends on sugar nucleotide. Jadi to form this, the glucose 6-phosphate first must be converted into UDP glucose. Okay, uridyl diphosphate glucose. Okay, no diphosphate, uridyl. Tolong tengok saya pun dah lupa dah. Okay, glucose. Okay, but basically you need to produce this one. This is a nucleotide. Okay, this is a glucose which is carbohydrate. Okay, campur dengan UDP which is a nucleotide. So this is a nucleotide sugar. So you produce UDP glucose. Okay, that's the second point. Okay. So this is the third point. Okay, the first, okay, second, this is the third point. All right. So this involves glycogenin. Okay, it is a protein. Okay, basically it is a protein to elongate. Okay, it is a protein to elongate ataupun basically it's an acuan. Okay, that's why it says here involve glycogenin, which is a protein scaffold. Ataupun it is an acuan, so that the glycogen unit will be part one by one. Right. So in the presence of glycogenin and glycogen synthase, what happens is that the glycogen will be elongated. Okay, from one chain, from one glucose, dia akan campur selalunya by 4 to 8. Okay, so what happens is that glycogen synthase, okay, will elongate between 4 to 6 glucose primer on glycogenin. So this glycogenin is like macam acuan. So macam dia katakan acuan lah, you have 4 lubang. So you have the glycogen, you have the glycogen synthase, then dia akan ambil one glucose, put here, lepas tu another one, then dia akan cantum. And usually on a scaffolding, it's like an acuan. So you will be either have 4 acuan all the way to from 4 to 8. Okay, basically it will take one glucose, sometimes 4. Lepas tu dia akan elongate. Okay, sometimes the scaffold ataupun the glycogenin can be even longer, 8. So it will take 8. Maksudnya susun dulu lah, susun, then the glycosynthase they will start to gabung. Okay, so you have 4, then sometimes you have 8, right? So then you have actually other more processing, so dia akan jadi lebih panjang. Okay, right? So the glycogen synthase will transfer the glycosyl unit, okay, that one by one lah, that one by one, okay, from the UDP glucose, okay, with this one, okay, then dia akan jadi panjang lah. So basically that's the story. Okay, you have acuan, you have the glycosyl, okay, yang ni the UDP glucose, sama ada 4 ataupun 8, dia akan jadi panjang. Okay, so once you have either 4, between 4 to 8, then dia akan bergabung lagi. So from 4, 8, jadi 12. Ataupun 8 plus 8, dia jadi 16. Okay, and selain daripada dia bergabung linear, okay, what happen is that the glycogenin, there is a version of glycogenin, okay, that will even make dia bercabang. Okay, now you have to know glycogen, okay, how is glycogen different from starch? Okay, now glycogen is the storage for animal. Okay, starch is the storage for plant. Okay, now even in starch there are 2 type. Ingat cerita nasi kita tadi, you have the beras wangi, you have the beras murah. Okay, beras murah, the chain is long, is linear. Okay, and then for beras wangi ataupun pulut, sometimes you have branch. Okay, branch. Okay, now for glycogen, the molecule shape is just like beras wangi. Okay, dia panjang and then it's branch. Okay, now the difference between glycogen and amylopectin ataupun yang starch punya macam beras wangi tadi is that for glycogen the branching is more frequent. Okay, kalau in beras wangi or in pulut, you have the long chain, then you have the branching. Okay, the branching usually occurs dalam, katakan ada 20. Okay, you have 20, then you have one branch. When gabung, then you have one branch. Ataupun gabung, you have branch. Now, for glycogen, usually the branching is even more frequent. Sometimes you have, inilah because you have 4 to 8. Sometimes up to 8, there is one branch. Another 8, there is one branch. Another 8, there is one branch. Okay, so glycogen is the same with amylopectin. Okay, only that with glycogen, the branching is even more dekat, between 4 to 8. Okay, kalau glycogen, kalau amylopectin, which is in beras wangi ataupun in pulut, is between 24 to 30. Okay, after 24 or 30 glucose, baru ada branching. Alright, so you have to know that lah. Okay, but basically they are the same, is glucose. Okay, now why is why is our glycogen more, the branching is even nearer? Okay, it's because this is our glycogen is actually an emergency storage, so that dia punya bentuk tu more simple and it's easier to degrade. Okay, sebab itu dia punya because of the branching is more frequent, dia bentuk dia macam is more fluffy. Okay, under the microscope it looks more fluffy, so that dia lebih senang. Okay, because kalau kita dah, if we don't have enough glucose, then they will start to break the glycogen. Okay, so why is it more easily degraded? Because it's more fluffy. In terms lah, I can show you that lah. Dalam bentuk microscope, it's more fluffy. Okay, it is more easily attacked by the enzyme because it is more exposed. Alright, okay lah. Tu banyak sangat cerita tentang glycogen. Okay, anyway, this is how glycogen is produced. Okay, alright. So just about this one lah. Okay, just about the production of glycogen. Now, what about the catabolism? Okay, what happens to tissue glycogen if we need it? Kalau kita perlukan dia dalam bentuk glucose. Ingat, we cannot use glycogen. We can only use the glucose which comes from the glycogen. Right? So what happens? Now, the tissue glycogen ataupun the glycogen in your muscle is a very important energy reservoir. And if we don't have enough sugar, we need it fast. Okay, that is why it is highly branched. Okay. However, the breakdown is carefully controlled. Okay, but it is faster kalau nak banding dengan starch lah. Okay, glycogen consists of granules of high molecular weight. Okay, and what happens when you need sugar? Okay, you don't need glycogen, you need sugar from the glycogen. So glycogen phosphorylase will cleave the glucose. Dia akan potong. Ingat tadi, glycogen is a chain of glucose. So when you need glucose back, okay, what happens is that the enzyme called glycogen phosphorylase, it will start to cleave the glucose. Okay, dia akan start potong, tapi it's not random. Okay, the release of glucose from that chain, from the glycogen chain, is actually very orchestrated. Okay, it's very sequential and it's very highly regulated and it's very macam dia tak potong sebarang lah. Dia ada cara dia potong. Okay, and I'm going to show you that later. Okay, and it is done by this enzyme called glycogen phosphorylase. So it will start to cleave the glucose selalunya from the non-reducing, daripada ujung. Dia tak boleh potong sebarang-sebarang, dia akan potong dari ujung. Ingatlah, you have a chain. Of course, if you have a chain, you have the ujung. So it will start to potong from the ujung. It doesn't start to potong anywhere on the chain. Okay, so this process will show you what happens. Okay, I'll show you the gambar aja. Okay, this one. Now, if this is the glycogen chain, okay, so you have the linear, then suddenly you have the branch. Okay, so dia highly branch Okay, sepatutnya gambar yang ini dia tunjuk lagi lah banyak lagi branch. Okay, this is just to show you. So dia tak akan potong mana-mana. It will not just cut anywhere. Usually it will start to cut from the non-reducing end, from this end. Okay, the non-reducing end from here. Okay, the glycogen phosphorylase, okay, will cleave the glycogen, okay, or will start to cut the glucose at the non-reducing end to generate glucose 1-phosphate. Okay, jadi dia akan potong, selalunya dia akan guna satu fosfat, dia potong. You donate 1-phosphate, dia akan potong. Donate 1-phosphate. If you look at this gambar aja, okay, so dia letak sini 11 fosfat, 11. Jadi kamu kira lah. Usually dia akan potong secara seimbang. Dia akan ambil sini mungkin 5 from here or 6 from here. Okay, but usually what happen is that it is a very orchestrated. Okay, selalunya dia akan biarkan from the branch, dia akan tinggalkan 4. Okay, so this is the branching point. Dia akan start to potong, dan dia akan potong supaya tinggal 4 di sini. So this 1, 2, 3, 4 will not be potong. Dia akan start to potong satu, kira 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6. Okay, so from 6, then kalau ini 11, there's going to be 5 from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jadi dia akan potong lah. So now you have potong sini. Okay, so you have leave 4. Okay, usually they will leave 4 residue, okay, ataupun 4 molecule of glucose from the chain. Okay, jadi 1, 2, 3, 4. Even this one also, selalunya around 4 to 5, but around 4 lah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then after that, it will not cut any further. Jadi, when you look at this gambar aja, okay, some student tanya, kenapa ni 11? Tak boleh nombor lain ke? Boleh. Okay, but we're putting it here 11 because we want to leave 4 here, leave 4 here. Okay, sini 4, sini 4. Okay, why is it 4? I am not sure. Okay, but usually it will leave 4, and usually 3, okay, at the branch point, it will take this 3 and pack it to this end. Ni. So this 1, 2, 3, pack here. Only 1 is left. Okay, and this one will be cut, terkeluar lah, then you get 1 glucose. Okay, so that is the order. Okay, it's very meticulous, it's very, dia memang ada SOP dia. Okay, dia tak boleh potong anywhere. Okay, it will start to potong like that, until it will start to potong, so that will start firstly from the non-reducing end. Okay, leaving about 4. Okay, so then itulah dia akan tinggal 4, and then 3 of the 1,4 link, okay, 3 of this, okay, are transferred to the non-reducing end of the glycogen. Jadi you take 3 of this, okay, transfer dekat sini. Okay, alright. Then amylo 1,6 glycosidase. This is another enzyme. Okay, this is the final enzyme. Okay, that will cut the final glucose from the cabang. Okay, because when you cut these 3, you the enzyme will pack it here. Okay, then you have only just 1 branch or 1 residue. Okay, tinggal satu saja on that branch. Then amylo 1,6 glucosidase will do the final cutting. Then you get the glucose. Okay, so then amylo 1,6 glucosidase cleave the final 1,6 glucose residue. Then you get glucose. Okay, right? So this is the whole process of how glycogen is cut. Okay, jadi dia akan ulang-ulang balik lah. Alright? So please do know this incident. Okay, and what is the enzyme? Okay, first the final enzyme is the amylo 1,6. Okay, then you know this one is the phosphorylation. Okay, the phosphorylase. Okay, then whatever this enzyme, okay, that comes in. Okay, just know this enzyme is important, this enzyme is important. Okay, this one is to do the initial cutting, this one is to do the final cutting. Okay, then you have to know the rearrangement of the glucose, right? Okay, so that is glucose tissue catabolism. Jadi potong, again, dia ada SOP dia sendiri, right? Now, glycogen metabolism, okay, it is highly regulated. And then when you look at glycogen metabolism, okay, there are a few tissue in your body. Now there is a few tissue in your body where you store a lot of glucose. Okay, the first, sorry, not glycogen. The first tissue that stores your glycogen is in your muscle. Okay, in your muscle. And then the second glucose ataupun the glycogen storage is in your liver. Okay, and these two different sites, the enzyme that is involved in the breakdown of glycogen is different, right? Firstly, both are highly regulated. Okay, and then it involves 2 types of glycogen synthase or glycogen phosphorylase. Okay, no, whether it's in this one or is in the other class. I think it's in the other class. I think I overshot to that. Okay, but whatever it is, in the liver there is another set of glucose synthase. Okay, ataupun there is another glycogen phosphorylase. In the muscle there is another set. Okay, I will not go into that. I think this is another class. Saya salah sebut. Okay, anyway, okay, so the control of glycogen, okay, it can be because of the enzyme, okay, and it can be because of hormone also. Jadi itu yang kita akan masuk. That's why I'm going to go into this one. Now, glycogen metabolism can be controlled by the glycogen synthase of phosphorylase tadi, okay, and it can also be regulated by hormone. Okay, you have insulin, you have glucagon, okay, you even have epinephrine. Okay, jadi different types of enzyme will have different types of, different types of hormone will control different types of glycogen metabolism. Sometimes your hormone can make glucose being stored. Sometimes they can make glucose being produced ataupun being used, right? So there are three types of hormone. Okay, the first one is insulin. Jadi kalau cakap insulin, semua tahulah insulin. Insulin itu untuk mengeluarkan gula, untuk memproses gula, to metabolize gula. It's true lah. Okay, so glycogen metabolism, okay, firstly is regulated by insulin. Okay, when you eat a lot of starch, ataupun you makan banyak sangat kanji or polysaccharide or sugar, okay, what happen is that the pancreas will start to mengeluarkan insulin. Okay, because the blood has too much insulin, glucose, that it has to be disimpan dulu. Otherwise, the glucose in your blood can attract infection. Okay, sebab itu orang yang kencing manis, when they get infection, the infection melarat. Okay, sampai kaki dia mereput, sampai when they are being cut or when they are being apabila dia tercedera ataupun dia dibedah, it's very hard for them to be cured. Why? Because they get infection. Why? Because too much glucose in the blood, that the bacteria will start to eat, and the bacteria beranak pinak lah. Okay, so that is why when people get kencing manis, kalau boleh jangan cedera, yang pasti doktor tak mau bedah. Okay, otherwise dia tak akan sembuh. Right? Okay, because the insulin fails to bring the sugar into the cell, right? Okay, anyway, insulin is secreted by the pancreas when you have too much sugar in your blood. Macamnya kamu makan banyak sangat nasi, kamu makan banyak sangat mie, okay, you eat too much starch lah, okay, then pancreas will start to produce insulin. Okay, now insulin works seperti penyambut tetamu, okay, an usher, okay, and sugar is basically your tetamu. Okay, so when you have too much tetamu dalam darah, so the penyambut tetamu akan tolong buka pintu. Okay, that is what insulin does actually. Dia buka pintu sel, then dia bawa masuk the gula into the cell. Right? The problem with that, sometimes some insulin dia tak bertindak, they get resistant. Some cell they get insulin resistant. You pernah dengar kan? Some people who get diabetes is because of insulin resistant. Basically, penyambut tetamu dia tak reti buka pintu. Okay, or pintu tak nak dengar arahan penyambut tetamu, so the sugar cannot go inside. Yeah, so basically there is and the bad thing about insulin is that not only does it open the door to bring glucose, okay, into the house, but when they bring glucose inside the house, they also bring fat. Okay, that is why it's very bad kalau orang tu dah lah banyak sangat makan nasi, banyak lagi makan lemak. It's a double danger, because not only are you bringing glucose into the house or the cell, but you also bringing fat into the cell. Jadi dah lah gemuk, jadi tambah gemuk lah. Okay, alright. Anyway, so insulin works that way. Dia buka pintu. Okay, dia bukan pintu untuk masuk, tapi dia pembuka pintu untuk gula masuk. Alright. Okay, so insulin is secreted by the pancreas. Okay, we all know that. Okay, stimulates glucose synthesis in the liver. Okay, why? Because when they buka pintu, when the glucose goes inside, then of course you get a lot of G6P. Okay, so then when you have a lot of G6P, then glycogen will be produced lah dengan banyaknya dalam liver. Okay, not only the liver but also in the muscle. Okay, so it will increase glucose transport not only into the liver, also into the muscle and adipose tissue. Jadi ini lagi satu lah. Okay, not only is it bringing in glucose into the cell, into the normal cell, it's also bringing glucose into the adipose tissue, making the adipose tissue lagi gemuk lah. Okay, and not only is it bringing in the glucose, it's also bringing in fat. So dah lah adipose tissue fat cell, you bagi lagi dia fat, lagi dia gemuk. Dia you bagi lagi dia glucose, which becomes acetyl-CoA, akan membentuk fatty acid, tambahlah gemuk. Jadi you see, this is the danger lah when you have so much sugar, right? Okay, so insulin basically will increase itulah glycogen synthesis. Right now, berlawanan dengan insulin, okay, the apa tu dia punya enemy, that, okay, yang berlawanan dengan insulin is another hormone which is called glucagon. Okay, kalau insulin uses glycogen synthesis, okay, glucagon is the other way around. Okay, so glucagon is also secreted by pancreas, sama by pancreas, but in response to low glucose. Okay, jadi maksudnya if there is too much glucose because you eat too much starch, okay, you trigger insulin. But if you berpuasa, or kalau you tak cukup makan gula, okay, ataupun you tak makan gula lah, okay, what happens is that insulin will not be produced, but glucagon will be produced. Okay, so glucagon will stimulate glycogen breakdown. Jadi dia akan suruh glycogen pecah-pecah, menghasilkan glucose to be brought into your brain, to be brought into your muscle, because these are the one that needs a lot of glucose. Okay, and glucagon, it acts primarily in the liver, right? So, and then the next hormone that regulates glycogen metabolism is called epinephrine. Okay, it's the same hormone yang cortisol. It's the same hormone menyebabkan jantung kamu berdegup. Okay, it's the same hormone yang kalau kamu nampak hantu ke, kalau kamu nampak anjing kejar, then you lari secepat-cepat mungkin. It's the same hormone. Okay, right? Now epinephrine works just like glucagon. Okay, it stimulates glycogen breakdown. Okay, it increases the rate of glycolysis in muscle. Okay, and also increases the release of glucose from the liver. Okay, so basically these are apa tu glycogen metabolism is not just because of the enzyme yang apa tu glycogen phosphorylase and glycogen synthase, but it is also because of hormone. Okay, so now you know why insulin is there, the important, what it does. Okay, glucagon is the other way around. Epinephrine is also the other way around with insulin. And so the next few gambar aja is just to show how some of this hormone induces glycogen metabolism. Okay, jadi kalau kita nak tengok epinephrine, epinephrine can work together with glucagon. So basically, if your blood glucose is low, okay, then your cell will start to produce glucagon and epinephrine. Okay, so what happens is that glucagon will go into the glucagon receptor. Okay, epinephrine will act on the beta adrenergic receptor, so it will produce protein kinase A. Now, protein kinase A will start to tell your cell, especially in the liver, to produce sugar. Okay, then that sugar comes from glycogen. Nah, jadi maksudnya the long chain of glycogen akan dipotong, okay, menjadi gula. Okay, now epinephrine also, what happen is that dia juga dapat menghalang insulin ini daripada berfungsi. So this epinephrine, either it works on the beta adrenergic. Okay, epinephrine can also work on the alpha 1 adrenergic receptor. So kalau with glucagon, protein kinase A is produced, but without glucagon, but when you need ataupun when more glucose is needed, okay, epinephrine can work also with alpha 1 adrenergic, okay, to produce protein kinase, and this actually will stop glycogen synthesis. Okay, so basically they akan induce glycogen breakdown lah. Yeah, so this is how epinephrine works with glucagon and how epinephrine works with insulin, right? Okay, this one it's the same gambar aja lah, more elaborate. I'll just skip. Right? Okay, so that's the first pathway. Okay, that is besides TCA. Yeah, that's besides glycolysis. Okay, so meaning you have glycogen metabolism. Okay, either to produce or to break glycogen from glucose or into glucose. Okay, now the next pathway, okay, that involves glucose is also is called gluconeogenesis. Okay, jadi perkataan ini sendiri dah beritahu kamu lah, gluco adalah glucose. Okay, neo is new. Okay, genesis menghasilkan. Okay, jadi ini adalah penghasilan gula yang baru, or producing glucose. So basically, gluconeogenesis is to produce glucose. Okay, because you need glucose. Okay, you need glucose either because you're not eating enough of it. okay, or you are not having glucose at all from your diet. Okay, contohnya kamu tak makan nasi lah, right? Okay. Now, gluconeogenesis occurs mainly in the liver and in the kidney. Okay, dalam kamu punya hati and inside your ginjal. Okay, basically the word gluconeogenesis inilah is a synthesis of new glucose. Okay, penghasilan gula baru. Okay, from common metabolite. Okay, now ingat I was telling you our body is like a kilang. Okay, kalau ada saja bahan mentah, we can produce something. Sama juga, kalau ada, as long as we have C, as long as O, as long as H, gabung mana, is going to get C6 again. Okay, which is glucose. Right, so it's the synthesis of new glucose from common metabolite, so from whatever metabolites available in your body. Okay, now why is this important? Okay, because an average human can consume about 160 gram of glucose per day. Okay, selalunya kalau kita makan nasi lah, orang yang biasa lah, bukan saya memang makan banyak lah. Okay, kalau orang biasa selalunya dia makan sikit. Okay, especially perempuan lah, dia makan sikit. And yet you still need a lot of glucose. Okay, so when your body need glucose and you don't provide it enough through diet, then your body have to produce glucose by itself. Okay, from whatever things that is inside your cell or inside your body. Okay, so you need a lot of glucose, okay, because 75% of that goes to the brain. Okay, kalau tak, you start to feel dizzy, pening kepala, okay. Jadi you need a lot of it. Okay, itulah kalau usually we eat around 200, 250. That's the recommended, but our body actually need a lot more. Okay, and our body fluid contain only 20 gram. Okay, padahal the body needs more. Okay, jadi that being the case, what happens is that your body will start to produce glucose from all metabolites lah. Okay. Right. Now, gluconeogenesis. Okay. Please jangan kamu anggap bahwa gluconeogenesis is the reversal of glycolysis. Jadi maksudnya, if glycolysis you have glucose to produce pyruvate. So don't think that glucogenesis is just terbalik, daripada pyruvate menghasilkan glucose balik. Even though that is quite true. Okay. Now remember, kalau glycolysis, you have 10 steps, okay, to produce pyruvate. Okay. Now for gluconeogenesis, somehow the step terbalik, tapi ada 3 poin dia berubah. Kalau tadi 10, now for gluconeogenesis dia 11. Okay. 7 of it is the same with glycolysis. Okay, but 3 is different. Okay. So but itulah, don't just think that it is a reversal. Okay, actually it is not reversal. Why? Okay, firstly, for glucogenesis to happen, more energy is needed. Sebab itu, kalaupun kamu cakap dengan saya, doktor macam mana kalau nak diet? Itulah, jangan makan nasi, jangan makan, don't take carbohydrate. Okay, but then again you say, oh, but you can still produce glucose. Betul, you can still produce glucose, but to produce the same amount of glucose, okay. Hold on, someone wrote something silly. I'll read that later. Okay. Yes, your body can produce glucose from common metabolites. The thing is that to produce glucose from pyruvate, walaupun dia terbalik, I mean glycolysis going this way, gluconeogenesis going this way. To produce glucose, you need a lot more energy. Okay, that is why walaupun kamu tak makan nasi, tak makan glucose, your body still need glucose and produce glucose. When it produce, actually needs more energy. So when you need more energy, you will lose more calorie. Right? So let us see ya. Okay. Nah, seperti saya katakan tadi ya, basically it's a reversal. Only that dalam 10 step of glycolysis, okay, only 7 step are retained. Okay, kita tahu ada 10, 7 is the same, is putar balik, but 3 is not the same. Okay, so 3 steps are replaced. Okay, in fact, daripada 3 yang replace, dia jadi 4. Okay, sepatutnya step number 1 is yang replace. Okay, I just show. Okay, so from if you look at glycolysis, from glucose to the production of pyruvate. Okay, this is the 10th step for glycolysis. Okay, and from pyruvate, this is gluconeogenesis, naik balik. Okay, step number 1, step number 3, and step number 10 is different. Yang lain semua sama. Okay, jadi kalau PP for phosphoenolpyruvate, it's only one step to produce pyruvate. But from pyruvate to produce balik phosphoenolpyruvate, actually there are two steps. And both of these steps menggunakan ATP. Okay, so when you use ATP, you use energy. That's why you use energy, you use more calorie, right? So 3 steps are replaced, especially step 1, 3, and 10. Okay, right? Orang minta cepat, boleh saya cepatkan Right, right. So the first step, okay, from pyruvate okay. Now this step, okay, uses the enzyme pyruvate carboxylase, okay, and this step memerlukan biotin cofactor. Right now, what is biotin? Okay, tadi kita cerita tentang thiamine, NADH, FADH is all vitamin B. Now, biotin is also a vitamin. Okay, it's also vitamin B. Okay, this is vitamin B7, B7, right? So, kamu nak hasilkan gula balik, you also still need vitamin B. Okay, so right? Okay, so from pyruvate, okay, add with the bicarbonate. Now, where does this bicarbonate come from? Okay, this carbonate comes from the CO2. Remember, you just now produce a lot of CO2. Okay, now in this case, if you want to produce glucose balik, okay, you will need back whatever CO2 that you produced from the from the Krebs cycle tadi. Okay, meaning not only you breathe it out, but if it's in the body, it is still salvage. Okay, it is salvageable. In fact, in this case, by pyruvate to produce oxaloacetate. Okay, from oxaloacetate, the second step is to produce PP. Okay, oxaloacetate PP, and then this uses ATP. Okay, yang pyruvate dengan bicarbonate pun menggunakan ATP. So basically, even that first step, okay, kalau macam in the, if you look at this one, okay, from PP to produce pyruvate, okay, you produce ATP. Kalau glycolysis. Now, in gluconeogenesis, even that first step, you use ATP 2 kali. Yang ini sekali. So, this is just to show that more energy is used if you want to produce glucose from pyruvate. Okay? Saya cuba cepatkan Sudah kehilangan tenaga. Saya buat ATP, saya pun dah berkurangan dah. Right? Okay, so to produce PP so PP go up lah. Saya daripada glucose go down, now from down you go up. Okay? Bacalah. Right, okay, itulah, yang lain tu kamu baca sendiri. Just know that there are 3 steps. Okay, so the next few slide, okay, just to show what happens. Okay, what is the enzyme? Okay, what is the happening? Okay, what is the regulation? Okay, so this is step 3 yang diganti Step 1 dengan 3 diganti. This is step 3. Last one is step number 1. Okay, yang diganti. Okay, now remember, from daripada glucose, you produce glucose 6-phosphate. Okay, cannot go out from the cell. Okay, tak boleh keluar pada cell. Okay, but then what about if your brain needs the gula from the glucose from the liver? So how is it transported? Okay, if glucose tak boleh keluar because it's the phosphate. That's because by the end of gluconeogenesis, okay, you will produce glucose 6-phosphate. Okay, but not glucose. Okay, the glucose 6-phosphate will be brought into the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, baru dia akan menghasilkan glucose. Meaning this glucose is not produced in the cytosol. Remember, kalau glycolysis, the glucose go into the cytosol or the cytoplasm. Okay, but this one, the glucose 6-phosphate tak akan menghasilkan glucose dalam cytoplasm. Okay, but what happen is that the glucose 6-phosphate will be brought into the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, baru dia menghasilkan glucose. Okay, so this glucose is not produced in the cytoplasm. Okay, please take note of that. Itu perbezaannya. Okay, then what happen? Then the vesicle, okay, with the glucose will diffuse into the plasma. Okay, baru glucose ini dia akan package inside the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, ini ada dinding sel ataupun cell membrane. Then it will diffuse out. Then baru keluar. Okay, meaning this glucose cannot just go out like this. No, this glucose is still packed with the phosphate. Okay, masuk dalam endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, only there then the glucose is free from the phosphate. Okay, the glucose-free phosphate. Dan this glucose is packaged in endoplasmic reticulum. Seolah-olah dia adalah macam satu produk. Then that product will go to the cell membrane and keluar. Okay, it doesn't keluar macam tu. Dia keluar macam package. Right? Okay, so please take note of that as you're going to read this. Okay, right. Okay, so right, so gluconeogenesis not only come from pyruvate, but banyak lagi lah. Your Cori cycle, saya sudah cerita dulu lah. Jadi you can just look at this one. Okay, the metabolite is also from fat. Okay, fat also can go back to be converted into glucose. Jadi kamu baca ni semua lah. Okay, saya cerita pun kamu dah tak boleh dengar dah. Your brain is crying now. I'm also crying penat dah. Right? Okay, so the rest I think you boleh baca sendiri lah. The last one is the pentose phosphate pathway. Okay, now this is, remember I told you need a lot of the gula dalam bentuk C5. Okay, C5 is for the production of DNA, RNA. Okay, ini kita tak banyak tunjuk. Okay, I just have to slide here. Okay, for you to look through. Okay, dia ada 2 step. And that you can look for yourself. Okay, kalau kamu tak faham, kamu boleh email atau kamu boleh tanya saya. Okay, saya dah penat dah. Kawan kamu pun memang betul dah penat dah. So, no question lah. You have any question? Kalau tak, kita tamat. Aduh, penat. Any question? Boleh ah? Boleh. Right. So, please look at the notes. Okay. Saya cerita banyak pun orang tak boleh dengar dah. Orang pun tak menafikan kewujudan saya dah. Okay, so if you have no more question, then I think we can stop here. Okay. Yang dah ambil QR code tadi, okay, you try lah. Yang ambil sekarang. Kalau tak dapat, just please give me your group number, your matrix number, and your name in the chat. Okay. Then if you have no more question, then we can stop here. Okay. Kamu pun saya rasa dah penat, dah tak larat. Saya pun dah tak larat. Habis dah ATP. Okay. And now I'm undergoing gluconeogenesis dah. Right. So with that, thank you. Okay, I'll see you all again next week. Okay. Right.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Doctor.
Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Take care.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Alright.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.